dealing with the larynx, larynx as well as the trachea as well as the bronchi. Okay, because it is mainly related to the first, the major part will be larynx, so the title will be larynx. Okay, so these are your objectives. Again, this is not from me. It is there in your blog booklet, and I just collected. Okay. So all these are the objectives, and so you are supposed to know as well as we have to cover all these objectives. Okay. So we'll try to summarize the things, but inshallah, hopefully. Almost 10. Okay. To begin with, the larynx, as you know, larynx is a major organ which is responsible for the production of voice. Okay, it is the major organ which is mainly involved in the production of voice. Without the larynx, you cannot produce the different types of sounds and other things. So it's also part of the voice box. Okay, so phonation or production of voice as well as the it also helps. It is also the passage for the respiration, as well as it acts as a sphincter between the food particles and the air. Okay, so it prevents any food particle from entering, even though the trachea will be a common passage. Okay, the upper part of the oropharynx and other things are common passage for the respiration as well as food particles. But once it goes below, then the larynx will act as a sphincter to prevent itself from the gagging. Okay. So it is the major organ for the voice production that you should know. Okay. Extension, anatomically you should know the extension. It extends from the lower border of the, actually from the upper part, from the epiglottis to the lower border of the, there is a cartilage here that is called the called cartilage. Okay. Yeah. Which one? This one? Okay. This acts as a sphincter. That's what I said. Whenever the food particle enters, the larynx, the epiglottis, we will see the epiglottis will close itself, and it acts as a sphincter, protective sphincter, or watchdog means it will be watching any food particles from entering. Even a small part of the food enters, then you start coughing and other things. So it is a reflex act which will prevent the foreign particles from entering. That's what is called as the watchdog. Yeah.
You mean during swallowing the epiglottis will come down?
Yeah, epiglottis will turn like this. Epiglottis is here. If you see here in this picture, this one is the epiglottis. Okay, it will close like this, and the food particles, when you swallow from here, the epiglottis will cover the. This is the larynx. Okay, it will cover the larynx, and the food particle will go like this down. Okay, through the esophagus. Okay. But even the closure is not important because the larynx itself will move upwards and it prevents the food particles from entering actually. Okay. Even if you cut the epiglottis, still it will be protected from the entering of the food particles because the larynx itself has a very good mechanism by which it will protect itself from entrance of the food particle. That's why it is called as the watchdog, or it is also seen as a protective sphincter for bodies. Okay. It extends from the epiglottis. This the epiglottis. This whole thing is epiglottis. The upper end of the epiglottis to the lower border of the cricoid cartilage. There is thyroid cartilage. It's not very prominent in next pictures. You will see it will going up to the cricoid cartilage. Okay. If you want to see the level of the vertebrae, it extends from the third cervical vertebra to the sixth cervical vertebra. In case of adults, okay, but in case of children, it is slightly higher. Okay, so it is from the C1 to the C4 vertebra. There is a difference between the adult and the children larynx, because in case of adult it is well grown and it has descended slightly downwards. Okay, so it is from C3 to C6 in case of adults. Communication above, as you see, you can see it is communicating above with the laryngopharynx, and below it will be passing, it continues down as the trachea. Okay, so it is the communication between the laryngopharynx and the trachea, and the growth of the larynx in case of adults is different compared to the female as well as in case of adults, it is well grown compared to the females, and the female larynx will be very similar to that of the children. Okay, that's why the voice of the child as well as the female is very much similar. But in case of the adult male, it will be different. Okay, in case of the children and in case of female, it will be high pitch. Okay, so that's why when they scream, it will be much more shrill, it will be hurting your ears. Okay, so this is because of the angulation of this thyroid cartilage. In case of the males, the angulation is much more. Okay, and it is much more prominent here also. So that's why you can see in case of the adult male will be much more prominent. That is called as the Adam's apple. Okay, the angulation is much more. That's why the voice is different compared to the females. So in case of adult male, it is well grown, and this is the size of this case of male, 44 millimeters in length, breadth, and this is the thickness. Okay, in millimeters. But in case of females, see the difference. This is the difference. Okay, which makes the female voice similar to that of the children. Okay. Coming to the skeleton of the larynx, the skeleton of the larynx is formed by 9 cartilage. It is not bones, even though it is called a skeleton. It is formed by the cartilages. So there are 9 cartilages, 3 paired and 3 unpaired. The unpaired cartilages are the thyroid, cricoid, as well as the epiglottis. If you see here, this is the thyroid cartilage, and this is the cricoid cartilage. Okay, this is the thyroid cartilage, this is the cricoid cartilage, and epiglottis is inside. This one is the epiglottis. Okay, these are the 3 unpaired cartilages. Which are the paired? Paired, I can obtain 3. These are the 3. Okay, one is the arytenoid. This arytenoid is the cartilage. You can see it from behind. Okay, here deep inside, it will be inside from behind. This is the picture from behind. Okay, so this is the arytenoid cartilage here. Okay, this one. Okay, so this is the cricoid cartilage seen from behind. This is the cricoid cartilage. So this is the cricoid cartilage from behind. This is the arytenoid cartilage. Okay. Then the corniculate cartilage. There is a small cartilages. Okay, and cuneiform is above. Very small cartilage. Very small. Okay. When you try to dissect it out, it's very difficult to see unless you are very good in observing. Okay. So these are the 3 paired cartilages. Okay. So 3 paired, 3 unpaired. Okay. So these become 6 and these become 3. Right. So totally 9 cartilages. So remember, all the cartilages of the larynx are hyaline cartilage, except the epiglottis, the corniculate, cuneiform, and the vocal process and apex of the arytenoid cartilage. Except this, all other cartilages are hyaline cartilage. Okay. The muscles of the larynx. Okay. So we'll study after the cartilages or the skeleton of the larynx. Now we have to concentrate more on the muscles of larynx. Okay. Muscles of larynx are divided into 2 types, intrinsic and extrinsic. Okay, intrinsic are those which are inside, and extrinsic are those which are outside. Intrinsic muscles are the cricothyroid, the posterior cricoarytenoid, then lateral cricoarytenoid, then the transverse arytenoid. We'll study all this one by one. Oblique arytenoid, then epiglotticus, then the thyroarytenoid, then the thyroepiglotticus, and the last is the focus. So these are the 9 muscles which are the muscles of the larynx. So in the examination, they might ask you the muscles or they might ask you the cartilages. It depends. Okay. So you should know the names of the cartilages. So you should know the names of the muscles. Okay. So these are the 9 intrinsic muscles. Which are the extrinsic? Extrinsic, which you have already studied before, which are outside, which are in the yeah. So all these are the muscles which are seen from outside. Okay. So this is the thyroid, which is the long muscle starting from the thyroid is the small muscle here. Then we have the sternothyroid, sternum up to the thyroid cartilage. Then the omohyoid, this one is the omohyoid. Then we have the digastric above muscle. Then the stylohyoid behind. Then the mylohyoid here, which form the floor of the oral cavity. Then the genohyoid deep inside, and the hair blossom, both are inside. which form the part of the tongue. So these are the extrinsic muscles which can be seen from outside, but the intrinsic muscles are inside the larynx itself. Okay, so it cannot be seen from here. So when you reflect all these muscles, then you can see the larynx and the muscles along with the cartilages. So these are the supraoid muscles. All these are the supraoid muscles. Okay, which can be seen, the digastric, mylohyoid, stylohyoid, and other muscles. Okay. We'll concentrate mainly on the intrinsic muscle, not on the extrinsic muscle, because you have already studied the first year the extrinsic muscle. We'll now concentrate mainly on the intrinsic muscles of the larynx. Okay. The first one is the cricothyroid muscle. So if you see in this picture, this is the cricothyroid. This is the muscle which is called as the cricothyroid here. Okay. So the origin of this muscle is from the lower border and lateral surface of the cricoid bone. The names itself indicate, in case of the neck, whatever muscles are there, the origin and insertion depends on the name. Okay. So if you concentrate on the name, much of the things will be said. Okay. So its name is cricothyroid. So it starts from the cricoid. This is the origin. This is the insertion. So it is simple. Okay. So cricoid cartilage, cricothyroid muscle will be starting from the cricoid cartilage, and the insertion will be on the thyroid cartilage. Okay. The special feature of this muscle is this is the only intrinsic muscle, even though it is called an intrinsic, it is outside. Okay. All the muscles can be seen from inside the larynx, but this is the only muscle which is present outside. So no other muscle is present outside except this one. Okay, so this is the typical feature of this muscle. Cricothyroid is, even though it is called an intrinsic muscle, but it is on the external aspect. Okay, so that is important, as well as it is supplied by the external laryngeal nerve. Okay. The action is it tenses the vocal ligaments as well as the closes the glottis. Okay, so it will be closing. If you see this muscle, whenever it contracts, it will close the glottis. I will show you the picture. This is how the glottis will look like, and it will be closing like this. Okay, so this is the opening of the glottis, and this is the closure of the glottis. Okay, so this is the slit through which the air will be entering inside this one. Okay, so when it closes, this is how it looks like. The glottis is closed. Okay, so the function of this muscle is it closes the glottis. Okay. The second muscle is the posterior cricoarytenoid. So what's the origin of this muscle? It is the cricoid cartilage, and the insertion will be on the arytenoid. You see here, this is the posterior cricoarytenoid. It is taking origin from this cricoid cartilage, the cricoid cartilage, and it is taking origin from here, going to the arytenoid cartilage. Okay. So this is the origin of this muscle from the cricoid cartilage, and the insertion will be on the arytenoid cartilage. We will not go into all these details, but at least you should remember the two cartilages. And the name itself indicates these cartilages. Okay. Action, it opens the glottis. A very important function. This is the sole abductor of the vocal folds. It is the only muscle which opens the vocal folds. All other muscles closes. So it is easy to remember. All muscle closes the larynx or the vocal folds except this one, posterior cricoarytenoid, which opens. Okay. So this is also called as the safety muscles of the larynx. This is the safety muscle of the larynx. Why it is called a safety muscle? Because it opens. All other muscles will close, and the patient, if it doesn't open, then the patient might die. Okay. The person will die. So this is the only muscle which opens. So it is very important muscle, and that's why it is called as the safety muscle of the larynx. Okay. And it is said, as I said, perhaps the most important muscle in the body. Okay, this is said to be the most important. Why? Because this is the muscle which it is acting when it is important for the survival. All muscles are acting, but if this doesn't work, then the patient will die, right? So that's why it is said to be the one of the most important muscle of the body. Okay. So this is about the posterior cricoarytenoid. Okay. So the next muscle is the lateral cricoarytenoid. So the posterior will be behind, and the lateral will be on the lateral side with the same origin and insertion. Origin will be from the cricoid cartilage, and the insertion will be on the arytenoid cartilage. Okay. So the name is similar. So just the difference is this is posterior seen from behind, and on the lateral side will be the lateral cricoarytenoid muscle. Okay. The muzzle, again, the action is the closure. So you remember, so all the muscles will close except the posterior arytenoid. Okay. Then the next muscle is the transverse arytenoid muscle. Okay. So here in the picture you can see this is the transverse arytenoid. Okay. So the origin, the name indicates it is transverse. So it is transverse, and it is only one bone has been mentioned here, arytenoid. So it takes origin from the arytenoid, inserts to the opposite arytenoid. So this is the one arytenoid which is in the form of triangle. So it takes origin from one muscle, bone, cartilage, from one cartilage, arytenoid cartilage, and goes to the other arytenoid cartilage. Okay, so that's why it is called as just arytenoid. Okay, so because the origin and insertion will be on the same cartilage, except it is on the opposite side. Okay. The special feature is it is the only unpaired intrinsic muscle. So you should remember, concentrate on these. Some of the important special features are mentioned because this might be asked in the MCQ or somewhere else. Okay, concentrate on this. So this is the only unpaired intrinsic muscle. All muscles are paired. Okay, they are two except this one because it is going from one side to the other side. So there cannot be another pair for that. Okay, so this is the only unpaired muscle which is present in the larynx. Okay, and as you know, this muscle also helps in the closure of the glottis. Okay. The next muscle is the oblique arytenoid. Okay. So if you see here, this is the transverse arytenoid. Now there is one muscle which is going from one arytenoid again to the opposite arytenoid, and it is in the oblique form, like crisscross. Okay. From the base of one to the apex of the other. Okay. So this is called as the oblique arytenoid. And the origin again, it is from one arytenoid to the apex of the other arytenoid cartilage. Okay. And the action is same, closure of the larynx. Then there is one muscle called as the aryepiglotticus. If you observe this oblique arytenoid, the continuation of this oblique arytenoid towards the epiglottis, the epiglottis, and we are seeing this is continuing, is called as the aryepiglotticus. Okay. The origin is from the arytenoid, as I said, and the second part it is getting inserted to the epiglottis. That's why it is called as the aryepiglotticus, because it is taking origin from the arytenoid and it is going towards up to the epiglottis. Okay. And the action again is also an closure of the larynx. Okay. And the second action of this is because it is attached to the epiglottis, as I said, whenever you swallow, it will be closing. So this helps in whenever this muscle contracts. So it also helps in the closure of the epiglottis or pulling down of the epiglottis, so that the food particles can go into the esophagus. Then we have something called as the thyroarytenoid. Okay. So if you see this thyroarytenoid, this is the muscle here, seen again from inside. All these muscles can be seen only when we open the larynx and see from behind or from above or somewhere like that. Okay, this muscle can be seen when you see from above. Okay, so it will be taking origin from the posterior aspect of the thyroid cartilage. This is the thyroid cartilage. This is the thyroid cartilage seen from inside. Even though it is shown from outside, it is not shown. Just to imagine how it is present, it is actually inside here. Okay. So it is taking origin from the posterior aspect of the angle of the thyroid cartilage, and it goes all the way up to the arytenoid cartilage. That's why it is called as the thyroarytenoid. Thyroid cartilage origin, and the insertion will be to the arytenoid cartilage. Okay. This also, just like other muscles, this also helps in the closure of the larynx. Then we have something called as the thyroepiglotticus. Okay. So some of the fibers of this the thyroid arytenoid muscle, which is here, will be going upwards like this. This is called as the thyroepiglotticus. So this same muscle, the thyroarytenoid, some of the fibers will go up to the epiglottis. This will be called as the thyroepiglotticus. Okay. This muscle helps in slightly opening of the larynx. It is not the major muscle, so that's why we don't give much importance to this because it's just few fibers will be there, even though it helps in slightly opening of the larynx. The last muscle is the ocalis muscle. Okay, ocalis muscle. A few fibers of the thyroarytenoid again will go inside, deep inside, and they form the ocal folds and the ocal ligaments. So here you can see the muscle, and that will be the ocalis muscle. Very, very important muscle again, which helps in the closure of the larynx again. Okay. Coming to the cavity of the larynx. Whenever you examine, whenever there is any infection or something like that, you will put the laryngoscopy and you will observe. So what do you observe? When you observe it, it will be typical. So you should be able to identify these regions and locate whatever problem is there at a particular point. Okay. So when you see the cavity of the larynx, the extent of the larynx you should know. It begins from the laryngeal inlet, that is the margins of the epiglottis, to the lower border of the cricoid cartilage. Okay, cricoid cartilage will be somewhere here, and that will be this one is the cricoid cartilage. It extends up to the lower border of the cricoid. This whole thing will be the larynx. Okay. Anterior border longer than the posterior border. If you see from the anterior side, if you have seen the picture, so this is the anterior one. It is complete, but the posterior one is deficient here. Okay, so the posterior one surface of the posterior side is deficient. So the anterior border is much longer. This is the anterior border, which is seen from behind. Even though you are seeing from behind, this is the anterior wall, which is much longer compared to the posterior wall. Okay, and this gives the obliquity. If you see it will be, the opening will be oblique. It is not vertically like this opening and it is opening like this. No, it is like this. Okay, the opening will be slightly oblique so that the food particle doesn't enter, only the air should enter. So that's why it is oblique in nature. Yeah.
Laryngeal inlet is to upper border of the glottis.
Yeah. The laryngeal inlet is this whole thing, and this is formed by the upper border of the margins of the epiglottis. Okay, partly by the margins of the epiglottis, and behind the other wall is there. Okay. The interior has 3 pairs of mucosal folds. If you see here, there are mucosal folds. Which are those? One is called as the aryepiglottic fold. So this glottis, this is the epiglottis, and there is a fold, mucosal fold. This is called as the aryepiglottic fold. Okay, which forms again the margins of the larynx. Okay. Then we have the other fold. This is called as the vestibular fold. This is called as the vestibular fold, and the third one is called as the ocal fold, where the ocalis muscle is there, is called as the ocal fold. Okay. The space between the aryepiglottic folds form the laryngeal inlet. This whole thing, this is the folds on either side. This whole thing, the epiglottis and the aryepiglottic fold on either side, will lead to the inlet of the larynx. This will form the boundaries of the inlet of the larynx. The space between the vestibular fold, this is the space between the I will show you the folds. These are the 2 vestibular folds. When they open, this is the space, big space. When they close, this is the space. Okay, so this is how it looks like. So the space between these 2 vocal folds, vestibular folds, will be called as the rima vestibuli. Rima vestibuli. Then the space between the 2 vocal folds. So this is the 2 vocal folds. Between them, there is a small space. This is called as the rima glottidis. Rima glottidis. So whenever they use these terms, you should know what exactly it is. Okay. When they use the laryngeal inlet, rima vestibuli, rima glottidis, then you should know what space we are talking about. Okay. Again, the larynx, even though it is small, it is divided into 3 spaces, 3 parts. Okay. One is called as the vestibuli, the upper part, this part, which is the extent from the aryepiglottic fold and the epiglottis to the vestibular fold. This is called as the vestibule. Okay. The second space is called as the sinus of the larynx, or is also called as ventricle. There is a space between the vestibular folds and the vocal fold. The space between them, this is called as the ventricle, because sometimes the foreign particles will enter, and once they enter, they will be in one particular space. So when they mention you that the foreign particle is in the ventricle, then you should know where exactly it is present. Okay, so that you can locate later. Okay, yeah.
Please, can you again read your code?
Yeah, the space from the inlet of the larynx, this is the inlet of the larynx, right? The epiglottis and the epiglottic fold on either side, this is the inlet. The space between this epiglottic fold up to the vestibular fold, this whole space is called as the vestibule. Okay, vestibule. The space between the vestibular fold and the vocal fold, this is called as the sinus, or it is also called as this is called as sinus, or it is also called as the ventricle. Okay, the space below this, okay, this is called as the infraglottic space. Okay, so these are the three spaces which are present within this small larynx. Okay,
We took the vocal folds. This is where you have the vocal cords.
yeah, this is the vocal fold. Yeah, this is called as the vocal cords. Yeah. Where the production of voice will be there. Yeah. Okay. Rima vestibuli acts as an exit valve by preventing air exit during expiration. If you see here, this is the rima vestibuli, the space between the two vestibular folds, right? When they open, this is the space. When they close, this is the space. Okay, both have been shown here in this picture. Okay, to show you how they move. Okay, when they close, this is the act of closing of this rima vestibuli is very important, especially during micturition, coughing, and all these acts. Okay, defecation. Whenever you defecate, you micturate. At that time, you are supposed to close your vestibular fold. Okay, okay, and then the pressure is created within the abdomen, and then all these acts, even during labor and other conditions, this is very important. The rima vestibuli will close the total space between them, and then it creates a pressure so that all these acts can be done. Okay, so it will hold the breath and you can do the acts. Okay. Rima glottis is the narrowest anterior-posterior cleft of the laryngeal inlet. If you see here, this is the rima glottis between the two vocal folds. So this is the narrow space. So if any foreign particle enter, usually it can be located here. Okay, because there is a narrow space, usually the foreign particles will be there. Even the smallest will enter, that usually it will be present here or in the vestibule, the sinus on either side. Okay, because this is the narrow space. Okay. Coming to the inlet of the larynx, this is how it can be observed. This is called as the laryngoscopy. Okay, this is done in the skeleton, but you can see actually this is how it is done. First, you have to put it inside and lift it up so that you can see directly into the larynx, because the larynx is slightly inside. So you put it on the epiglottis and pull the epiglottis and then put the pressure, and a light is passed through this so that you can see the larynx. Okay, so this is called as the laryngoscopy. Okay. So when you see through the laryngoscopy, this is how it looks like. Okay. So then you should be able to identify each space here, what is there. Okay, when you see it, this is how it looks like. But when you see through it, you should be able to identify each and every part. Okay, so what are the boundaries of this inlet of larynx? As I said, in the front we have the epiglottis as well as the epiglottic folds here on either side. Okay, upper margin of the epiglottis, and on either side we have the and behind we have this arytenoid, and between the two arytenoid there is something called as the interarytenoid fold. So on posterior side, here will be arytenoid cartilages, and between the cartilages there is a mucosal fold here posteriorly. This is called as the interarytenoidal fold. Okay. On lateral sides, on either side, we have the eriepiglottic fold. These are the eriepiglottic fold on either side. So these are the folds. Okay. So in the front we have the epiglottis, behind we have the arytenoid with the interarytenoid mucosal fold. On either side we have the eriepiglottic folds. Okay. So this is how it looks like. This will be the inlet, and this is lined by the non-keratinized stratified squamous epithelium. This is important again. When there is carcinoma, this squamous epithelium will change itself. Okay. So this is the inlet of larynx. So here also you can see the same thing. This is the epiglottis here, and here behind we have the arytenoids, and in between will be the interarytenoidal fold, and on the lateral side we have these are the periepithelial folds. Okay. So actually, when you this is how it is actually, but when you see through the laryngoscopy, this is how it looks like. Okay. Now coming to after the cartilages and the muscles, now you should know the membranes of the larynx. There are three important membranes in this larynx. One is called as the thyrohyoid membrane. Okay, if you see here between the thyroid cartilage and the hyoid bone, there is a membrane. There is the thyroid cartilage, there is the hyoid bone, and in between there is a membrane called as the thyrohyoid membrane. Okay, thyrohyoid membrane. Okay, between the cricoid cartilage and the thyroid cartilage, again there is a membrane. This is called as the cricothyroid membrane. This is the second membrane which is present. So both these membranes can be seen from outside. Okay. And the third membrane is called as the quadrangular membrane, which is deep inside here. Okay. So this can be seen from only from inside. When you cut the lines, and then you can see the third membrane is present. So these are the three important membranes which are present in the larynx. One is the thyrohyoid membrane between the thyroid cartilage and the hyoid bone. The second is between the cricoid and the thyroid. So this is called as the cricothyroid membrane. And the third membrane is inside this called as the quadrangular membrane. Okay. Now coming to the nerve supply of the larynx. Nerve supply of the larynx is very important because, as I said, whenever a foreign particle enters, okay, this is very important for both the motor as well as sensory functions. Okay, it has to sense the foreign particle and it has to be removed. Okay, as well as the normal functioning of the larynx is also a very important part, and that is done by mainly by the intact nerve supply. Okay, so all are supplied by the recurrent laryngeal nerve. All the muscles, this is the motor. Okay, all are supplied by the recurrent. All the muscles of the larynx are supplied by the recurrent laryngeal nerve. Okay, except the cricothyroid, which is supplied by the external laryngeal nerve. Okay, so all are supplied by the recurrent laryngeal nerve, except the cricothyroid. Why cricothyroid? Why cricothyroid? Why it is supplied by? It is outside. So because it is outside, so it is supplied by the external laryngeal. All other are inside. Okay, so that's why you should know the difference. Okay, all are supplied by the recurrent laryngeal nerve, except the cricothyroid, which is supplied by the external laryngeal nerve. Coming to the nerve supply, sensory nerve supply. Okay, the sensation is mainly by the internal laryngeal nerve. Okay, it supplies mucous membrane above the level of the vocal folds. Okay, you see the vocal folds below. So above the vocal folds, everything is supplied by the internal laryngeal nerve. Okay, and below the same recurrent laryngeal nerve, which was motor nerve, here it becomes sensory. Okay, the lower part below the vocal folds, the recurrent laryngeal nerve will be the main sensory nerve. Okay, below the vocal fold. So there is difference above the vocal fold and then below the vocal fold. So if it is above, it will be the internal laryngeal nerve, and if it is below, that will be mainly by the recurrent laryngeal nerve. Okay. So this is the whole process. I will not go into this process again. Okay, how it is descending and how it is supplying the different parts. Coming to the blood supply. Again, it is divided above the vocal folds and below the vocal folds. Above the vocal fold, it is supplied by an artery which is called as the superior thyroid artery, and it gives a branch. This is called as the superior laryngeal artery. You see here, this is the superior thyroid artery which is supplying the thyroid gland. Okay, it gives a small branch and it will be going deep inside, and that will be the superior laryngeal artery. Okay, okay. So superior laryngeal artery is a branch of the superior thyroid artery. Superior thyroid artery is a branch of the distal laryngeal artery. Okay. Coming to the below the vocal folds, this is supplied again by a branch from the inferior thyroid artery. Okay, inferior thyroid artery is coming from here, and it supplies this gland, and a branch will go inside. This is called the inferior laryngeal artery. Okay, so it is the larynx, so it is the superior laryngeal artery above the vocal folds and inferior laryngeal artery below the vocal folds. Okay, and the veins are also with the similar names: superior laryngeal vein and inferior laryngeal vein will be drained. They form a plexus and then they drain. Okay. Coming to the lymphatic drainage. Lymphatic drainage, again above the vocal folds, it will be to the prelaryngeal as well as the zygogastric lymph nodes, which are in the neck. Okay. And below the vocal folds, it will be to the pretracheal as well as the paratracheal. Okay. So if there is any carcinoma above the vocal fold, then it will be mainly involved in the lymph nodes which are in the neck. And if it is below the vocal fold, then you have to do some X-rays or some other investigation to locate the pretracheal as well as paratracheal lymph nodes and their environment. Okay. So this is the difference between the above and below the vocal folds. So the nerve supply is different, sensory, the blood supply is different, as well as even the lymphatic drainage. Okay. So that will be called as the above the vocal folds and below the vocal folds, that will be called as the watershed line. So we differentiate the part above the vocal folds and below the vocal folds. Coming to the trachea. Okay, so the trachea is the continuation of the larynx, which is also called as the windpipe. Okay, so it is cartilaginous, membranous tube forming the beginning of the lower part of the passage is the trachea, which continues from the larynx. Okay, and it lies in partly in the neck as well as partly in the thoracic region. Okay, in the superior mediastinum. Okay, the length is almost 10 to 11 centimeters and the breadth is 2 centimeters. And it is patent open due to the presence of these cartilaginous rings. If you see here, if you see this as well as the esophagus is always collapsed. Okay, but the trachea is always open. Okay, this is because of the presence of the cartilaginous rings. Okay, these are the C-shaped cartilaginous rings. Okay, and behind it is not complete circling rings, but only C-shaped, and behind there is a small muscle which will be called as the trachealis muscle. Okay, so the posterior part will be called as the trachealis muscle. Okay, why there should be cartilaginous rings in the trachea, not in the esophagus? Why? What is the difference? It makes why the esophagus is always closed and it has to be open. Like pardon? Air and food. Okay, so what is the difference you make?
For the esophagus movement before the trachea only movement is esophagus for peristalsis movement.
Okay.
Yeah. The esophagus has its own, food has its own pressure, but the air has its own pressure.
Yeah. Food has its own pressure, and even the gravitational force will pull the, as well as you said, the peristaltic movements also help in the movement. But in case of the trachea, if it is closed, then lot of energy is spent just to open it, because the air doesn't have so much pressure with which it will enter. Okay, and so a lot of pressure should be created, and a lot of energy should be open, and you have to breathe with much more difficulty. Okay, so you have to apply so much pressure. Now you are breathing and you don't even feel. Okay, because of the intact patent tracheal rings. And if it is closed, then you have to put a pressure, and every time you have to keep on spending so much energy on them. Okay, that's why these tracheal rings are there. But they are not complete. Why they are not complete? Why they are not in circle? Why they are only C-shaped? Why they are only C-shaped? Why not complete rings? They are just cartilaginous rings are just, as I said, they are C-shaped cartilaginous rings. They are not complete circle like this, but only like this. Why it should be like that?
Because of the flexibility, the esophagus comes behind.
Okay, so
there is space. For the space.
Compression.
Flexibility.
Flexibility. Yeah, somewhat like that. Okay, because the esophagus is behind, it is closed, and it can create its own pressure and it can go. And when it is creating, if the food bolus is going and the C cartilaginous rings are there, the pressure of this cartilaginous rings will be much more, and that leads to difficulty in swallowing. Okay, and it will create an artificial pressure with which the difficulty in swallowing will be there. So instead of that, there is a smooth muscle which is very competent to that of the muscle of the esophagus. So whenever the pressure is in the esophagus, there is slight this thing, the pressure in the trachea, and it will be vice versa. When the air, the pressure will be there, then it will close. So it doesn't put much pressure on the esophagus and difficulty in the swallowing. So that's why, because the
once again.
okay, because the esophagus is behind, it is soft. Okay. And if this is total C shading, then it will be totally closing the esophagus. Okay, it will be putting a lot of pressure and there will be difficulty in swallowing. When you take the food, even though there is some pressure, but this is cartilage, there is much more pressure. And if it starts applying pressure on the esophagus, which is very soft, then it cannot open itself. And there will be difficulty in swallowing. So that's why it is, behind it is soft. So there is a small muscle which is very competent to get out the muscle of the wall of the esophagus. So whenever it is, even though it is sitting behind, it doesn't put much pressure on the esophagus, and the esophagus can open easily and you can swallow. Okay, so this is the importance of the trachealis muscle which is behind. Okay, so there are almost 16 to 20 cartilaginous ring which starts from the lower part of the larynx up to the division of the two bronchi. Okay. So the beginning is from the lower part of the cricoid cartilage. You have seen the cricoid cartilage, so you can see the cricoid cartilage. Just below that will be the beginning of the trachea and the tracheal rings. And it will continue up to the 6th cervical vertebra, and then it divides into two main primary bronchus. Okay. It runs downwards, backwards, and slightly towards the right side. If you take an X-ray and see the chest X-ray, you can see the trachea by its shadow. Because the air is there in the trachea, there is a shadow with which you can identify, and it is slightly deviated towards the right side. Okay. This is the normal position of this trachea. Okay, it will be slightly toward the right side, and it enters the superior mediastinum, and the esophagus is behind it. And it will be dividing into two primary bronchi at the level of T4 vertebra. Beginning will be at the C6 and the termination will be at the T4 vertebra. Coming to the relations, so in the front we have the skin in case of the neck, skin superficial, facial, vestic fascia, behind the esophagus, recurrent angina, all these are relations. I don't know whether the relations are important for you or not. Read the objectives, and depending on that you can read. Okay, whether you should read. Okay, coming to the blood supply of the trachea. This is the trachea again here. So it is by the inferior thyroid artery. Okay, and the venous drainage is by the left brachiocephalic vein. Okay, and the lymphatic drainage is by the pretracheal and paratracheal lymph nodes. There are group of lymph nodes on the front as well as on the sides of the trachea. These are part of the pretracheal as well as the paratracheal lymph nodes, which are again very important. As you studied, the lower part of the larynx below the open folds will be draining into this, as well as even the trachea itself, as well as the part of the structures which are there within the superior mediastinum also draining into this. Okay, so these are the pretracheal and paratracheal lymph nodes with which it will be draining. Coming to the nerve supply, the parasympathetic will be by the vagus and the sympathetic will be by the middle cervical ganglion. There are three ganglions, superior middle as well as inferior cervical ganglions. So the middle cervical ganglion will be actually supplying the sympathetic supply. Coming to the bronchi, as we saw that after the trachea is at the level of T4 vertebra, it divides into two major bifurcation. These are called as the primary bronchi, the right and the left. Okay. The bronchi consists of extrapulmonary as well as intrapulmonary parts. If you see here, the bronchi, when they come out, they will be outside. Partly they are outside, partly inside the lung. So they are called extrapulmonary when they are outside, and the intrapulmonary which is inside the lung. So it is divided extrapulmonary as well as the intrapulmonary, especially for the primary bronchus, not the secondary and tertiary. Only the primary bronchus will be extrapulmonary as well as the intrapulmonary. Okay. Each principal bronchus divides with the lung into secondary, or they are also called as the lobar bronchi. So depending on the number of lobes, the bronchi on the right and left side will divide. So that's what is called a lobar or secondary. Okay. So because on the right side we have 3 lobes, so it will divide into 3. On the left side we have 2, so that's what it will divide into 2 lobar bronchi. Okay. So did you get it? So on the right side, because we have 3 lobes of the lung, right lung, so it will divide into 3 secondary bronchi, or they are also called as the lobar bronchi. On the left side we have only 2 lobes, so that's why it will divide into 2 lobar bronchi or secondary bronchi. Each secondary bronchi will divide again into the terminal bronchi or the segmental bronchi, and as you know, there are 10 segments in each lung, so it divides into 10 segmental bronchi on each side. Even though there are 3 lobes on the right side, 2 lobes on the left side, but still both the lungs have equal number of segments. Okay, when you take the lung, okay, if you study the lung at that time, yeah, both the lungs will have 10 segments. Depending on the 10 segments, so there will be 10 segmental bronchi. Okay. I think this. Okay. Each segmental bronchi will again divides and divides and divides, and it will almost 6 to 18 times it will divide till it reaches the stage of the respiratory bronchioles and the alveoli and ambulus everything. Okay. Coming to the right bronchus, it is much more wider. If you see here in this picture, I don't know whether it is very prominent or not. Okay, so if you see here, it will be, this is the trachea and this is the right bronchus. It will be much wider compared to the left one, and it is shorter because it divides early into 3. Okay, it is shorter and more vertical. Okay, more vertical, and it is in line with that of the trachea. So whenever the foreign particle enter, usually the physician will search for this in the right bronchus. Okay. Second, rarely they go for the left bronchus because the trachea, as I said, it is slightly divided towards the right side, and this right primary bronchus is more wider, as well as it is more in angulation with that of the trachea. Okay. Left will be much more oblique. Okay. And right will be much more vertical. So usually whenever the foreign particle enters, it suddenly enters into the right side. Okay. So that's why always they look into it for any foreign particles. Okay. So it is much more wider, shorter, as well as more vertical compared to the left bronchus. As I said, mostly the foreign particles will enter into this, and it divides into 3 secondary bronchus, and the length of this is almost 2.5 centimeters extrapulmonary. Okay. Coming to the left bronchus, it is narrower as well as longer. It is much more narrower as well as longer. It divides into secondary bronchus much more late. Okay. And it is almost the size of 5 centimeters extrapulmonary. Okay. So that was about the bronchus. And after this, what will happen when we study the bronchopulmonary segment. Again, it is very important exam point of view, bronchopulmonary segments, as well as when we study the lung itself. At that time, we will study in detail about the remaining part. Okay, this is just the beginning of the respiratory passage. Okay. So, if you have any doubts regarding this, you can ask me.
So, what the bronchi? What bronchi?
Yeah.
Different.
Yeah.